Hi everybody, I want to talk a bit about the term magical sky daddy, which is a derogatory term we hear from atheists used to describe the god worshipped by various forms of theists. So it could be Christians, sometimes it's used to refer to other gods as well. And I think it's exclusively a derogatory term. I've never heard a theist actually happily refer to their god as the magical sky daddy. Now I suppose I've got a slight problem with it, only in that it's a bit of a cliche. It's probably one of those annoying phrases that you hear so often, or it's long become that actually. It became an annoying phrase a long time ago. It starts to get a bit tiresome. I feel similar about things like the flying spaghetti monster, or was it Bertrand Russell's teapot, things like that. I start to find these terms a bit boring. I understand why people still use them, but I do, on a purely personal level, get very bored of them. Get very bored of hearing these these phrases. But I wanted to look at why we typically depict God as being in the sky. I mean, yeah, a lot of theists do refer to God as their father, so the term daddy isn't really inappropriate there, and it's a supernatural proposition, so magical isn't really a problem either. What about sky? What about this word sky? I think the reason that gods are typically depicted as being in the sky, and bear in mind I'm not a theologian or anything, I'm just trying to apply a little bit of common sense to this, is I think even if you're a very ancient human, or ancient, caveman or whatever, crawling around looking for food or whatever, it's going to become very apparent to you that life seems to come from the sky, doesn't it? And that sounds a bit new agey, but basically that's where the sun is, and the sun is what makes the plants grow. You know, it's what keeps us warm. It's what keeps that cycle of evaporation and precipitation going. It's very much the source of energy for our planet. And I think even if you're a very ancient caveman, you're going to start to figure that out. You're not going to understand the complex scientific shit behind it. You're not going to understand exactly how evaporation and precipitation works, or how photosynthesis works, or whatever. But it's going to become very apparent to you that this is how the sun works. And I think this is why we probably have more than a few ancient religions that were sun worshippers, ancient cultures that worship the sun, because it seems to be the sun. It seems very much to be the source of life for the world. So I think that would be why, it would go some way to explaining why a lot of ancient cultures decided to worship the sun. They'd be very thankful to the sun if they had a good harvest, or whether they had a good season, or the weather was nice and warm. But they might think they'd angered the sun or something if they didn't have that. They might think they'd displeased the sun, so they would, do all these, worship the sun even more, or sacrifice people to the sun, or sort of awful things like that. And I think this is why this whole idea of God, or whatever it is, being in the sky comes from. I think that's why it's such a common idea, the idea of people looking up when they pray. They worship upwards like this, don't they? It's always upwards. The idea of God being depicted in the ground, I don't know. Anyone who is a theologian, maybe they could tell me of any gods that have been depicted as, living under the ground or whatever. The only ones I'm immediately aware of are things like, the complete opposite of gods, these things like Satan living in the underworld or whatever. So that seems to be the bad place down there, whereas the good place is all wonderful up there. What I would say to people who are sick of having their beloved deity described as a magical sky daddy or anything similar, you need to try and explain what it is if you want people to stop referring it to it as what it supposedly isn't. Because I've just given a bit of a reason there as for where this magical sky daddy kind of concept comes from. It's not something that someone just pulled out of their arse one day. It is actually, there's some roots, the magical bit being that it's supernatural, there's no scientific explanations given for it, the daddy bit being that they are seen as a father or a parent figure, and of course the sky bit, as I've just explained there, I think has to do with the source of life, the sun seeming to all be in the sky. But this idea, I watched a video recently about is it Messianic Maniac or Manic, whatever it is, and I thought it was quite good. He does wear a fedora, which put me off a little bit at first, but I've watched a couple of his videos and I've quite enjoyed them so far. I've not found anything misogynistic or racist or anything yet, so we're doing pretty good. And yeah, he did this quite good video on ichtheism, where he mentioned that some people say God is timeless and spaceless, or exists timelessly and spacelessly. And as he, I think, correctly pointed out, if something exists timelessly and spacelessly, it exists never and nowhere. Yeah, welcome to atheism, guys. That's what we already think. Yeah, that's what non-existence is, basically. So if you... That's not a good enough explanation. What we need to know is, how does this God exist? If he doesn't exist in the sky, where does he exist? Does he exist in some other physical location? And if he doesn't exist physically at all, you've got your work cut out for you. You've got to explain how he exists non-physically. I don't know how anything can exist non-physically. It's a very weird idea. So you need to explain the existence of the non-physical God. I mean, to me, like I was saying, existence, there's only so many ways we measure existence, and that's, we only have ever determined anything to exist in the natural world. We've never determined anything to exist in anything outside of the natural world. So yeah, if basically what I'm saying is, if people could explain a bit more about how and where and so on their God exists, then maybe the term magical sky daddy might start to disappear. You'd still maybe get a few dickheads who use the term, but I think it would drift away, and people might start actually referring to your God by a more accurate term. But as I say, first and foremost, you've got to do the work and explain, in language that is understandable, what is your God? Where does your God exist? Let me know what you think, everybody. Goodbye.